What's going on? It's time for another episode of Too Hard for the Radio, transmitting from the future free state of Greater Idaho. I am the one-armed madman. And back with me today to discuss a concert debacle, we've got the great Bob Lament. Bob, it's good to see you again.
How's it going?
We're good, man.
I'm Idaho these days.
It's nice. I love it here. You know, I've got this guy that's moved into a room. I rent rooms out at my house, and this kid moved here. Mm-hmm. He wanted to become a plumber, so, you know, he went and did the whole plumber thing, and he got fired. And as soon as he got fired, he's like, I'm going back to California. And I'm like, dude, you're screwing yourself over. This is the place to be. Like, you want to be here. Do not go back there, but, you know, you can lead a horse to water. You can't make him drink, right?
Yeah. How's it, if he's got no job, how's he going to live in California? Holy moly.
Yeah, right?
Expensive out there, right?
Yeah, it's not. You know, when I moved here, dog. It's a podcast. Nobody cares.
That's all right. Nobody
cares. When I moved, stop it. When I moved here, like, all of my friends in California are like, don't go to Idaho. That you're going out to the middle. Stop it. You're going out to the middle of nowhere. We're not, you're never going to see anything. No, you're never going to do anything. It's just going to be boring up there. And now all those people are moving here. So
yeah, I was going to say they're all tired of getting taxed to death and paying.
It's funny because
California tax.
Right. It's funny because I lived in Northern California, but I also lived in Southern California for a couple of years. And each different Californian has their own distinct look. So like now when me and my buddies from California go to concerts and shit like that, we can pick out the other California people, like, just a sore thumb. We stick out like crazy. So it's actually like, I went to a couple concerts when I first moved here 9 years ago, and it was just concerts. Wasn't anything great. And now when I go, it has more of a like Southern California feel to it. The people around are more like Southern California type people. And it's interesting also because like we all escaped tyranny. So we're like Cubans. I call California New Cuba because like at some point they're going to be driving nothing but old cars because you're not going to be able to drive anything but an electric car. So they're going to be all old cars, communists. So I call it New Cuba. So we're all refugees of New Cuba.
Yeah, they have fantastic cars in Cuba because they had so much tariffs and what have you. Everybody's got these great cars from the 50s down there.
There's a great show.
They're handed down generationally. It's crazy.
There's a great show called Cuban Chrome that follows a bunch of these like mechanics and taxi drivers who are all having to like work on these 55 Chevys and these old Bel Airs and shit. Like they have no tools, no parts, and they just make it happen. It's a super cool show because you get to see like good cars, but also the horrors of communism.
That's right. You get this fantastic car.
Yeah.
And then there's decimated brutalist architecture in the background.
Yeah. So speaking of Idaho and concerts, I've got my Stained shirt on. I went and saw Daughtry, Stained, and Breaking Benjamin last night, and it was a blast. Oh, wow. Aaron Lewis he's just incredible. I've seen him. This would be the third time I've seen him. I've seen him twice do his solo act in like small settings, which is super cool because he just does like acoustic guitar, slide guitar. He plays his country stuff. He plays some of his rock stuff, and then he does a ton of covers. And like covers you'd never expect him to do, like Cyndi Lauper, Time After Time, or Four Non-Blondes, or, he does a great, like, Bob Seger, Turn the Page. So I've seen that show twice, which is incredible. And then last night, he was doing his, like, Stained and new album. So I recognize most of the songs because Stained has been around, and I'm a rocker. But the newer songs that I listened to his new album once before I went, just because I figured I had to. And way heavier than like anything he's ever done. So it was super cool to see him do like borderline metal. So the guy's just so talented. It's a beauty to watch.
Oh, it's fantastic. I'm glad it went well.
Yeah. So the part that didn't go well.
Well.
Yeah. So the part that didn't go well, let's get to that. So let me paint a picture here for you. So we're in an outdoor amphitheater. It's a grass, kind of a slope, and then it levels out, and then you've got like chairs down in the bottom where people had to pay extra to sit. Yeah. So we're sitting in the middle, kind of just like right off center of the band. And to our left and to our right, the entire stadium is on their feet. But for some reason, our little section is kind of like, I guess, older people and sitting down. So as the
Okay.
music starts, we got a guy, he's off a little bit to the left of me. Him and his family stand up. And the couple and their kid, this guy was a psychopath. I was terrified of him, to be honest with you. It was him, his wife, and their 2-year-old. And he's trying to start a
Okay.
fight with the guy standing up in front of him. So
Mm.
the question to you is,
Yeah.
would etiquette dictate that he should sit down? Or are you at a
No.
concert and you should expect that people are standing? Where do you fall on this?
Well, I mean, I hate to be a populist here, but it's a concert, man. And you're on the lawn or wherever. People stand up and you just have to deal with it. I mean, that's the nature of, the way it is. I would say, yeah, you can't have them sit down. I mean, they paid the same money as you. They have their space. They can stand up. If you decide not to stand up, then that's just, you chose poorly. You should have sat someplace else.
Exactly.
Or
that was
depending on how packed it is, you can. I mean, you move around. Screw it. Just say, I'm going to go up higher on the hill. So even if you're standing up, I can see over you. So
here's where I fall in the exact same place as you do on this.
Yeah.
There was also an aspect of it to where the couple that was sitting down could have easily slid over 6 feet and not be sitting beside the guy.
Oh yeah.
And the people standing in front could have easily moved over to the other side of the field where people was standing. So like I had a hard time like assigning blame, like who is at fault here, because either one of them could have been the bigger person and just said, we'll move.
Right. Yeah.
But the guy sitting next to me was wanting to start a fight with this guy. He starts throwing popcorn at him. At one point, he goes over to like me and the people sitting behind, like kind of the side of me, and he goes, "Hey, if you guys say he hit me first, I'll throw a beer at him." And me just
He's inciting violence.
Yeah, and like I'm a libertarian. I don't support violence of any kind, let alone like, hey, can you lie and say that I was a violent person? So I just went to him. I was like, hey, man, if I were you, I'd just move. Freedom's messy.
You can
deal
move,
with it.
Yeah.
That was my line to him is freedom is messy. Deal with it. And
It's,
he did not like that line at all.
That's part of capitalism is to sell the better seat, right? And so I know I've never been to that place that you were at, but I know the kind of the setup, right? And so you could pay more and get seats up front, but to be honest with you, they'll all be standing up there anyway.
Yeah.
You'll just have a seat and you'll have somebody standing up in front of you. It'd be closer together. So I mean, he had probably the best, option that was available, and it was not even the most expensive option. So
yeah,
I'm with you. I think concerts, you get what you get. You don't want somebody like messing with your stuff or bothering you or whatever. But if they want to stand up, they can stand up. You would just deal with it. I would just move. I'd be like, I'll move over there.
Easy,
or
right?
Find a spot that's not got many people and just move out.
I thought it was a perfect example of like the libertarian laissez-faire type of attitude.
Oh yeah.
And then there was the authoritarian attitude where I say what you do. So the interesting part was I was there with my mother, her husband, and the 12-year-old son. And her husband is an ex-cop, and he fell on the other side of the argument. These people need to sit down. And to me, that was an interesting observation. It's like, yeah, man, you think you're the law, but you're not. Like, freedom is messy. You got to deal with it. Like, you can't just be an authoritarian and make somebody sit down if they're in your way. Do I wish that they would have sat down and I could have got a little bit better view? Sure. But am I the one who's going to be throwing popcorn at the back of somebody's head and trying to start a fight with them over that? Like, no. Like, what is the plan? Like, if he's not, what are you going to do? Are you going to go complain to security? Are you going to start a fight? Like,
they're going to be like, he paid the same amount as you.
Security's going to go deal with it. There's a big field here. You can go sit wherever the hell you want.
That's the best part. And if it wasn't overly crowded, then you had an option. You know what I mean? That's always the good part about the lawn. If it's not so packed, then you can just go, to another part of the lawn and, have your little space.
Yeah. It's also like I hear this argument a lot, the same type of argument framing around airplanes. So like, are you a lean the seat back on the airplane, or are you
Oh
the
no, I never lean
oh
the seat
really?
back.
See, I'm a seat lean back as soon as I get on the
But I'm
plane.
okay with that because it only goes so far back. But I typically don't lean the seat back. I'm taller. I'm 6'1".
Yeah, I'm 6'3".
And oh, there you go. So we're taller guys, right? So, but I don't lean the seat back only because I don't want the hassle of somebody, because I'm already cramped in the seat.
I got you.
You're cramped too, right?
So it's a
So
diplomatic move.
right, it's a total. So then they can't bother me about anything. I can just be myself. And typically, to be honest with you, if it's not assigned seating, I will sit in the back, and you can't tilt the seat back. But I sit all the way back there because then I'm away from people, and then I don't, you don't have as much people to deal with. You don't have anybody behind you.
Yeah.
And but you can't tilt your seat back anyway when you're back there because typically, I mean, you can maybe a little bit, but not as much as the other one.
Yeah, I'm all about,
to be honest,
like,
the seats going back, they don't go back that far.
no, they don't.
You're
They
not
don't.
really bothering anybody for the
No.
most part anyhow. So
I like to sit with no people. If I can get an aisle seat, if I can get an aisle seat, like I'm not a window guy either because I'm 6'3". I don't want my knees crammed into that little corner by the window.
You want to be on
I want to be in the aisle so I can hang my knee out a little bit and trip up the flight attendants.
and well, big shoulders. So I have big shoulders. So I put my shoulder out in the aisle. So like basically like a quarter of my body is in the aisle when I sit on the aisle because my shoulder and leg hang out, and then I have to tuck in for the drink cart. So yeah, I did that. I remember I was flying a number of years ago with a coworker, and we're both broad-shouldered people, and we both sat on either side of the aisle and basically blocked the aisle. It was terrible. we kept on having to lean in, squinch in, and then people go by, and we lean back out, and it's just this little tiny thin area in between us.
So now, are you jockeying for the armrest, or are you letting the other person have it?
Well, if you sit on the aisle, you get the one armrest for sure. On the inside, it just depends. I mean, if I'm by myself or with strangers or whatever, I'll just see how it goes. I don't have to have the armrest. I'll kind of tuck my arm in a bit. But with my wife, I always take the armrest because I'm a terrible husband.
So that reminds me of a story. We went to Alaska when I was 18, right after I graduated high school. Amazing trip. We went on a cruise. I was not looking forward to it because I had just gotten back from Cancun and drank myself stupid. So I was like, what do I need to go to Alaska for? It's going to be boring. I'm on a ship with all these old people. But God, I had a blast. It was just incredible. On the way back, my dad's a big guy too. He's 6'2", 220. He's heavier, broader than I am. And he got sat in between these two very large people. And this was before you had to buy the multiple seats when you were large.
Oh, yeah.
And they wouldn't let him move. My sister was going to switch with him because she was tiny, but they were like, oh no, you have to sit in your assigned seat. And these fucking idiots. And so like halfway through the flight, I hear, ow. And I look back, and this woman is just like staring at my dad. Why would you do that? And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Apparently, he got so sick of both of them jockeying for the arms that he just like slammed his elbows down. And apparently, like the rest was kind of up a little bit because this woman had her fat fold stuck in there. So when he slammed his elbows down, he pinched her fucking stomach.
That's too funny.
Oh, man. Airplanes. I haven't been on an airplane in a while. I only travel now because like my prosthetic guy is in Minnesota, so I have to fly to Minnesota to get prosthetic work done. So now, I remember like the second time right after I got my amputation, my ex-wife was an alcoholic and she was having serious issues after my amputation, a lot more than I was. And I had a hard time getting her to the airport. And when we got there, I realized, I was like, oh shit, like I just had my arm cut off. I can sit in a fucking wheelchair right now and just get blown by everybody.
Right, that's right.
So we did that, which was great.
Seating.
And so now I'm a pre-board guy. I go right up and I go, hey man, I need some time to get my shit up in there and I need to go on first. And I get a lot of dirty looks for doing that, and I don't care.
I mean, take advantage by what I say. I mean, you're right. At this point, you get the pre-board, you get the pre-board. Everybody gets pissed off about all this stuff, but the realities are, if it's that important to you, pony up.
Yeah. They all want like diversity and, for people to be helped in a vacuum. But then when it actually like affects their life in some way, they're not for it at all. So like,
oh no, yeah.
I remember when I was in college, we were talking about like marginalized voices. And so my pitch was, here's a lesson in marginalized voices. I was born to a middle-class family, so I was not marginalized. And then I became a drug addict, so I was marginalized. And then I got a 6-figure job and got clean, so then I wasn't marginalized. Then I blew my hand off, so now I'm back to being marginalized again.
That's everybody.
It's unsustainable.
I mean, for the most part. Not that everybody has those same things, but at some point in your life, chances are you're going to cross lines that put you in a different category for whatever reason.
Yep.
Obviously everybody wants the lines to go up, right? So where you get more, but that's not the way it always works. And so, that's just the luck of the draw, or, whatever you're doing at that time, and how you're acting and where your head's at. And it just all happens. And I don't get that, but I'm cheap. So I'm always like, no, we're not going to pay anymore. And then we get to the airport. My wife's like, they gave me a deal. We get aboard earlier. I paid $50 or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right. Yeah. But I never do it. But she's always the one that's like, I need to get on there. I'm going to pay the money. I'm like, all right, whatever.
It's always funny to me when like the people who are all for like diversity and marginalization and all this stuff, it's always a crack up to me when they like don't like what that brings to them essentially. So like during COVID, I remember at one point, like it was probably 6 months in, maybe even a year in, and I kind of just realized, I was like, oh yeah, I'm one of the vulnerable people that they're supposed to be saving right now. So I did a very simple Facebook post. I said, I am a vulnerable person. I am immunocompromised, and I don't give a fuck if you wear a mask. And the funny part about it was all of my friends from San Francisco immediately piled on telling me why I was wrong.
Right. Well, that COVID was, I don't know if we can really even say that. You're going to get,
I don't think YouTube cares anymore.
Dinged or anymore.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting divide. So all of the rural people who skewed more rural, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
All the people in the cities, oh, you better wear that effing mask. And they were wearing them in their car by themselves, driving around.
I saw a guy 2 days ago wearing a mask in his car. We were turning. He was turning left. I was turning right on the street. And I saw him, and something came over him. I was like, take your mask off, moron.
Right. Are you saving yourself from,
God.
You're not, what are you doing?
It's like, you're getting more exhaust in your car than fucking virus, particularly. Like, it's just such a joke, right?
Yeah, exactly. I always like, what is your thought process here?
Yeah.
If you've got it, you've got it. And if you don't have it, it's not coming in the window, while you're driving, more than likely, if the window's up even.
Stay home if you're afraid, just
exactly
stay home. Like I see these super freaks, like there's not a lot of them here in Idaho, but there still are some of them. And the time that I run into them the most is when I'm picking up my medications. Because every once in a while you get like a couple or just these super freaks that are, greasy, disgusting hair with blue streaks through it and just acne and just a disgusting troll looking person. And every time they're in line to get vaccines.
Oh. Okay.
It's like,
hey, whatever
man,
you want to do.
If you still want that vaccine, I got a vaccine to sell you too,
Yeah, it was so dividing, and I almost, not to be a conspiracist.
Oh, we're getting there. I got questions. I got some. We're getting there.
Because it seemed like it was purposefully dividing. You know what I mean? So at the height of COVID, at the time, my father-in-law, God rest his soul now, we meet him for lunch out in the middle of nowhere, because that's where he lived, at this little place. Absolutely nobody is doing anything that has been broadcast all over the television. No mask, no distance, no nothing.
Yeah.
They still are smoking at the restaurant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just a time capsule. Just throw yourself back about 30, 35 years.
Yeah.
That's
To
what
the
it was
before
like.
times.
And it's like, wow. And then I'm, live close to the city. And so it's just a weird experience. But, it's like, it was like a whole dividing thing. So then you had the people who were like towing the line and they're getting a shot every 2 weeks or something and wearing their mask and yelling at everybody to wear the mask. And then you go out there and it's like, it's as if, this wasn't even happening. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Matt, what are you talking about? I don't even know what you're talking about,
Yeah.
And so, but I found that incredibly almost purposeful. It seemed like they were almost purposefully engaging this to people in order to create more of a divide amongst everybody.
Yeah. I saw a really weird video the other day that kind of reminds me of this, and we're going to go back to airplanes again. There's this video, this woman had her German Shepherd on an airplane. The woman next to her is freaking out. This dog's going to kill me. And she's losing her fucking mind, And all the people are around her filming her and you're crazy. And what's your disability? You don't have a disability. You're fine. And it's just all this fucking craziness. And then the flight attendant comes over and I start looking at her and I go, she's not wearing like a normal flight attendant shirt. Like you can't see what airline she works for. And then I start looking around in the video. All the blinds are closed. It's quiet. And I think to myself, this is a fake video.
Oh, fake, yeah.
And why?
Because there's
what
always
is the
noise in an
point?
airplane.
Like, why would you make that? Like, what is the point if not just to get people riled up?
Okay, you're on a subject that I find incredibly irritating and fascinating. There are so many. I mean, it's almost as if most of the videos on YouTube and so forth are fake. You always have the best camera, it's up a little bit like it's a security camera, but it's not a security camera because it's too clear and something's happening on the screen and you're like, wait a minute, there's no way in hell that the security camera would have even caught this. And yet it's just a play. It's all like this. It's all play stuff because I don't know if people realize this. Most security cameras, if it's in an establishment, it has to see the till. The number one thing they care about is not if you get shot in the lobby, it's who's taking money in and out of this till.
Yeah.
And are they put it in their pocket? And so if they have one camera in a place, every time it's going to have the register in the camera view. And I don't think that people realize this because you see these videos, it's like maybe they have, even if they have 3 or 4 cameras, they have the other camera positioned so you can see the till. They're obsessed with the money. They don't care about the rest of it. This is not for your safety.
No.
This is all for where's my money at? Where's my money going? Is anybody taking my money?
Yep.
And so you see all these videos with all these camera angles and stuff, and it's like, this is obviously fake. And some of them are so fake that they're laughing while they're doing it, and yet people are buying it as real, it seems like, with the comments. If you look in the comments, which I hate. I read the comments and then I hate myself for reading the comments.
Me too.
And then so yeah, I mean, it's like a vicious kind of thing now that and I even asked, so I'm not the youngest person, but so I asked somebody who was in their early 20s, and I said, why are all these videos fake? And they're like, yeah, they all seem to be fake, don't they? As if they didn't care. And I'm like, don't you care that they're trying to fool you, or everybody's so stupid that they're buying it, or is this entertainment? And they're like, I don't really know.
Yeah, I don't like being manipulated. It's a dirty feeling. And like when you see something like that and you go, oh, and then it makes you question everything, right?
Right.
Like now everything I'm watching, is this real? Like, is that a man or a woman? Like I watched it and I go, ooh, that chick's kind of good looking. Wait a minute, let's look at the Adam's apple a little bit first because we don't know. But like a lot of those super freaks on TikTok who are talking about like sexualizing your children, that they're talking like they're teachers. most of those people aren't actually teachers. Like a lot of people
No,
have
I'm
dug
sure
into
not.
these videos and found that these people aren't teachers. So then you have to, again, like, what is the point? Like, is it really just about getting people angry, manipulating them, keeping them on edge? You
Oh, I
know,
think so.
like
I think
how
so.
on edge would you be as a parent if all you saw was these super freaks on TikTok and you're thinking every day, this is what's happening to my child? Like you're
Right.
going to
They're in the
be in just this
schools.
heightened state of anxiety all the time.
Yeah. I think we should I'm trying to think of a good way a good phrase to use, but basically all these things are shot like a porno,
Yeah.
which is it's not there's not real. It's like the
Yeah.
delivery guy shows up and then he gets laid, right?
That's a great
So
episode title.
so they're all shot like a porno. And it's it's fake, but they're kind of doing a moderate amount of acting, and it's not always convincing. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, we have to think of a word that call these because it's not really fake videos. You know, it's kind of like a pornified shoot or something.
Yeah.
But I think it is. I think, well, you know, I mean, we can get into psyops and all that kind of stuff. And you're right. It's uh uh you know, and you get into I'm trying to remember his name now, but anyway, if you can keep the population on edge, you can control them easier,
Yeah.
right? So and so you have to think about that whenever this stuff is happening. You have to think, you think, all right, is this purposeful to the extent that they're trying to keep everybody distracted on their own issues to where they don't see the big issue, which is where, you know, robbing everybody blind
Hmm.
or spending all their money on stupid shit or, you know, getting away with living a much better life than we should just because we're in a political, you know, system.
Yeah.
And, and yeah, you have to wonder. Now, I think the other problem is, and this is what I'm gonna call gambler syndrome, and that is, and this is what happens in social media constantly, right? So you see somebody hit it big, as in gambling, right? They're a nobody out of nowhere, and then they post something, and then they hit it big, right? And it's like, oh, it goes viral. It's
Yeah.
all viral. Everything's not viral. Some of this stuff is planned.
Yeah. Okay. I love
And
this line, like this angle, because
yeah.
this is something I've been watching and I haven't brought this to the podcast yet, but I kind of just figured it out in the last couple of days. So there's
Mhm.
this podcast called The Sean Ryan Show. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it.
No, who's Sean Ryan? Is this
Somebody sent
somebody?
me an episode of it like 2 years ago. And it was this guy who was a plumber in Long Island.
Mhm.
This is his story. This is not like I don't believe this guy is. I think this guy's totally full of shit. But his story was he's a plumber on Long Island. He's working for like government contractors in their private
Mhm.
homes and shit like that. 2008 hits and his business takes a shit. He takes a
Mhm.
contractor job doing HVAC in Antarctica, where he figured out that this, I don't remember what it's called, but it's some like big science fucking machine is actually like a laser energy
Okay.
weapon. And I'm listening to this guy and I'm going, this guy is full of shit. Like, why? And then I start looking at the host, Sean Ryan. I go, who is this guy? So I look him up.
Right.
He was military, CIA, military intelligence. The guy's a complete spook. So then
Uh-huh.
now I'm interested. So why does this spook have this podcast? And
Ah,
and get
why?
this, he can't talk. He can't talk for more than like a minute on his own. He's not a talker. He's a quiet guy. So how does
Uh-huh.
this podcast get huge? It's the CIA. It's a
Uh,
CIA
they
podcast. So I was wondering what the angle was because he's had all these people on talking about the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis,
Mhm.
ancient civilizations. He's had all these weirdos
Right.
on. But he's
Yeah.
also had on like the military guys and the CIA guys and all that type of shit.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking like, what is the psyop here? Is he trying to discredit the Younger Impact hypothesis or ancient civilizations, or what is really going
Oh,
on
could
here?
be.
I figured it out this week because he was on Joe Rogan a few days ago, and all he wanted to talk about was where we needed to go to war next.
Ah, there you go.
Everybody knows
Have
that
you
Mike Baker was
investigated
CIA.
Younger Dryer? Have you ever investigated that?
What was that? Sorry.
Younger Dryer, have you looked
Yeah,
into that?
I'm
Okay.
interested in it. It's a
Oh,
very
it's
interesting
interesting.
theory.
It's incredibly interesting, and I think I was always I'm always on the fence on everything for a while, and then I'm like, oh, I read,
Yeah.
and it all could still be bullshit. But I'm on the side where, yeah, you know what? This is not what everybody's saying is not the case. Civilization is way older than everybody says, I believe. Now, the interesting thing, and you have no idea whenever you mention this. Interesting thing is I happen to have some information about Antarctica that I probably shouldn't share. But it's been a long time, so therefore I think I'm okay to share it.
Oh boy, here we go.
Because
this is why you have a cat avatar, isn't it?
Because of connections, we'll put it that way. I'm not going to be very, very vague.
I know a guy who knew a guy who may have seen a guy.
I will tell you off air if you want something more concrete.
Absolutely.
I'll be very vague at the moment. I knew someone who worked in Antarctica. Believe it or not, I know it's tough to accept whenever you just mention this. And I believe at this point, nothing is happening in Antarctica that's not scientific. But, years ago, there was a lot of stuff happening in Antarctica because there was a lot of people down there and they were doing, interesting stuff at the time because that was the place to do it because of where it's at. And, so basically, if you can imagine, right? So I'm going to give you a kind of a analogy here. Have you ever been to one of those places where you can be on one side of the room and whisper and hear on the other side of the room?
Yeah.
Guess what? There's a place in the world where you can listen to the other side of the room or pretty much anywhere in the room.
Ooh. That's interesting.
And yeah, we just mentioned where it was.
Huh.
Because there's absolutely nothing to prevent you from listening to everything.
Huh. That's interesting. That's interesting.
Because radio waves go everywhere.
Yeah.
And where is the least amount of interference?
Down there where there's nobody. Oh man. That's so interesting. Anyway, that's interesting.
So, but that's why I said, because I've not actually followed this guy. I've had to read up on him now.
Yeah.
But yeah, but there was a lot of activity in that area many years ago, and it had to deal with listening. And but now the thing he talks about the laser and everything, maybe not, who knows? But the reality is that if you look back, this is the interesting thing I find about conspiracy theories, is because almost every conspiracy theory, there is something concrete that sets it off.
Absolutely.
Right. So if you were to look back, you would, and if you could get a hold of any kind of records, you will find military activity in Antarctica to this day, right, in the guise of scientific exploration. But it's not just scientists. It's a lot of, they're all associated with the military.
Yeah.
Who gets them down there? Who brings them home? Who maintains everything? Military. There's buildings on skis that get moved around on Antarctica because of the ice melts and then refreezes. So all that's maintained by the government. And there's multiple governments down there. But, not the bad ones.
Yeah,
but,
right. America you can trust America. Come on. Joe Biden's a good guy.
Yeah, so then, whether he's telling the truth or not is almost immaterial, because a real cursory look is going to show you all this activity. So now whatever the hell he says is believable.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
I could go either way on Antarctica. Like anything could be going on down there. I kind of have the same take on the moon. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we never went to the moon, and I also wouldn't be surprised if we had bases up there right now.
It's terrible. I skew toward the bases.
Yeah, I could see it. Like, I could go either way on that one. Like, I really don't know. Like, a funny thing that happened on the way to the moon is a very good movie, and I've also seen people debunk it. But, like,
yeah,
if you don't know the actual information, all you can really do is trust the person giving it to you, right? So it's like, right. I don't have the expertise to debunk any of that shit in that movie.
Right. Well, and here's the thing. Here's how I kind of take conspiracy theories. And I always say, think logically. right? If you were to think logically, right? And I mean, I'm not talking about thinking overly critically about something. People are saying, "Oh yeah, they got a base on the moon and they can control the weather from the moon and all that." Okay, wipe all that away. Take it down to the core level. They're like, "Could there be a base on the moon?" Okay, yes, there could be. It's possible, right? Doesn't seem likely, but it's possible. And then you take that logic and you work your way down. Okay, the military. What is every military operation that you've ever learned about in the past that is not classified? What is the one thing that they always want to do in a military operation? They want to be on the highest point,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So World War One, we got people in the air to drop bombs, and we want that help win the war.
Yeah.
Right?
The high ground.
Right, high ground. I always laugh because then you go into Star Wars. You say, Anakin, I have the higher ground. And then, but it's true. So they always want going up, 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 right?
Yeah.
So then we go World War II. We're masters of the air, bombers and everything. Basically, World War II happened because of air warfare. There was ground warfare. Don't get me wrong. A lot of people died and so forth. But really what turned the tides of everything was in the air.
Yeah.
And then what happened? Then we accelerate. Now we got spy planes higher in the air. We got spy satellites higher in the air. The logic is there. What better place to be than on the moon that circles the earth, not synchronously? It's not synchronous. If the moon was in the same place every time in the sky, it would be useless. It circles the globe asynchronously, which means it sees the whole globe on its cycles. What perfect platform.
Yeah. And on the back side,
platform.
You're completely hidden.
Right.
You've got a view of
it.
everything. You can get away from the sun. It's the ultimate military base.
Exactly. So that's where my logic says it's a done deal. Because if I was the general, I'd be like, we got to get on this fucking moon right away because then we're above everybody.
Yeah. And then you've got what was that guy's name? Ben Rich, the guy who worked for Skunk Works, who said, if you can imagine it, we've already done it and figured it out or got rid of it because it doesn't work.
Now the only clue, I mean, there's probably more clues than this, but the big clue that I know is I think his name is Gary McKinnon. He was a British guy who hacked. They called him a hacker, but the realities were he just was kind of a motivated, weirdo in Britain who, at a time whenever passwords were not mandatory, and he got into computers and he found lists and lists of people who were said they're non-terrestrial officers.
Ooh, interesting.
And ships, names of ships, like naval names, like the Kitty Hawk and this kind of stuff that are naval vessels, but they are non-terrestrial. So and he had all this. They're still trying to get him deported out of England. They won't deport him. The United States is, and he's had this. His life was turned upside down. It was back in the 90s, and so yeah. So I mean, you take that and you think about it in a logical way, and you're like, of course they're on the moon. Why wouldn't they be on the moon? And if they're not, they're planning to be on the moon because that's the place of the most strategic advantage. It's strategic for the Earth, and it's strategic for anything coming to the Earth.
Yeah. You know what?
So,
have you ever heard any of these guys who talk about the secret space program? Like that guy, Corey Good, I think was the first one that did it.
Yeah.
It's a wild, ridiculous story. But like you said, a lot of the good conspiracies have a kernel of truth to them.
Right.
And you could take away all of his crazy stuff and you're just left with what you were discussing right there. And that's very logical.
Well, think about the history, right? Mm-hmm. So Space Force is here with us now. Did you know that we didn't have an Air Force during World War II, but we had something called the Army Air Corps?
Yeah.
And the Army Air Corps was invented in World War I and didn't become the Air Force until after, I think at the end of World War II. I don't even think they actually called it at the end of World. It was after World War II they call it the Air Force. So we're talking about 30 some years that it wasn't called the Air Force, that it was integrated into the Army, right? And then it spun off Space Force. I would not be surprised if Space Force hasn't been in existence for 40 plus years. And now they just finally spun it off because it's like, it's getting too big, boys. We can't hide it inside of the Navy and the Air Force. Because if you, or the Marines, because all of those, every one of those pieces of the defense have an aerial component, right? We can't hide it in there anymore. So we're going to have to make it its own thing. Everybody's figuring it out, you know? And so Space Force has probably been around for 40 years. It's just now they're officially calling it something because they're at a point where they can't not call it something.
Let's deconstruct this for a minute. Let's say that what you're talking about right now is all true. For the sake of argument, it's all true. What are they using for propulsion? Are they still messing around with rockets, or do they have something more exotic? I watched a really interesting podcast with Eric Weinstein a couple of days ago, who's one of the smartest people in the world. The guy's just brilliant. And he has this theory that string theory is bullshit. And it's like a red herring to keep us away from actual physics. And essentially his point is that, like, string theory cannot be proven or disproven just by the nature of the thing. You can't do it. And the game is to keep throwing money at string theory to keep people from figuring out. Like, so his other point was that if these UFOs that we're seeing did come from somewhere else, we need to figure out how the fuck they did it. And if people didn't want us to figure that out, string theory would be a very good red herring to throw at people. So where are you on that? Like, are these people still using rockets, or did they figure something out?
Wow, you really caught me at a good time here. I'm going to tell you all kinds of weird shit.
Perfect.
So I'm going to take you back a little bit. And this is another weird story. You know, believe me or not believe me, but here you go. And I've told this story many times. I told it on our show. Back at the time it happened, I told it on our show. And so in 2005, May of 2005, around 4:00 in the afternoon, mind you, so it's daylight. It's not dark. It's not getting dark. It's not going to be dark. Everybody, whenever I tell this story, I've realized I have to make this very clear, because as soon as I mention it, they're like, "Oh, well, it was dark and I couldn't tell." Not dark. I'm swinging my children on their swing set, and a sphere flies over my house. Probably, I'm guessing, I'm not an aeronautical person, at the same height as a 747. A sphere, right? It's perfectly round. So the reason was, I'm swinging my kids. My son, who was younger, loved to look at planes. And so I was watching for planes going overhead, because they did, because at the time we lived near an Air Force base. And I would say, "Hey, buddy, there's a plane," right? And we watch it. I'm looking up out of the corner of my eye. I catch this thing. I thought it was a plane. I'm looking at it and I'm like, "That's not a plane." And it travels from southeast to northwest in my field of vision, essentially over my head. I saw the front of it. I saw the back of it. And it looked like a metal ball flying through the air with determinants in a direction, not an arc, and it was probably, my guess is, and this is all guess, because it was really high up in the sky, because I could see it going behind clouds and going in front of clouds. Wow. And it was probably about 4 times the nose cone of a 747, but it was a ball.
Wow. That's fucking cool.
Lasted maybe 20 to 30 seconds, went from horizon to horizon. And I'm like, this is amazing. I would have never seen this before. Yeah. And at the time, for me at least, I had not heard. I mean, you hear about flying triangles, you hear about flying saucers, you hear about cigar shapes. At the time, for me, I'd never really heard about flying spheres. And so I had to take care of my kids. They didn't see it. Of course, they were little, didn't matter. And I couldn't take a picture. Think about 2005. Cell phones had shit cameras. Couldn't take a picture. I couldn't get a camera. everybody always asks me, why don't you get a camera? I'm like, it's 20 seconds.
And you don't,
I
yeah,
was
you don't think about
mesmerized.
something like that. You're like, holy shit.
I was just watching it.
Yeah.
It was like watching a car wreck. I was just like totally mesmerized by this. I'm like, what is that? And then your head just starts cycling. And so anyway, so after I got a chance, I started doing searches and I started trying to find things on spheres and everything. And I was like, did I really see this? Did I really see this? And I was sure that I saw it, but you know how it goes after these things happen, you always have to question yourself. And so anyway, I found a thing at the time, it was called ufomaps.com, and somebody else saw it in another little town
cool.
a ways away. And they had documented on this thing, like a MUFON it wasn't a MUFON report, but they documented on this website. And they saw the same thing I did, traveling the same direction about the same time, right? So it was after me, and I'm like, okay, it's on, right? So what is this? So my thought, to answer your question, is I believe that this probably was not from someplace else.
I would agree.
This is an anti-gravity vehicle that was flying over my house, and I happened to be looking up at the right time. Literally, if I was not looking up 10 seconds before or after, I would have not really even noticed it. And it's flying at a high rate of speed. Now they're releasing hypersonic news about hypersonic missiles and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, that means, again, every time you hear about something that seems to be like something that would be classified, that means it's been around for 20, 30 years. Because that's just how the first day, they just don't take it off and throw it over people's heads and say, here we are. There's a lot of iterations and so forth that go into that are hidden. That's why we have Groom Lake and Area 51 and all that stuff. But so I believe that they do probably have some type of anti-gravity. And this was 2005, mind you, when I saw this, which means it's way before that.
Yeah,
right.
For
so
sure.
you talk
30
about Ben
years.
Rich. Yeah, you talk about Ben Rich saying that. That's probably what Ben Rich was talking about.
Yeah, probably.
And I have never seen it since. Everybody's like, well, what, I'm like, they didn't beam things into my head. I didn't feel any different.
As far
as I just happened to see this thing because of the nature of what I was doing. And it was just bizarre. And I wish I could see it again, but I still haven't.
Yeah. I've never seen anything either. Like, I've always wanted to see something. I saw a really cool green shooting star a couple months ago. It was just this massive.
Oh yeah.
Like, it was the most incredible thing I've ever seen, probably, and it was amazing. But
yeah,
like,
if you go for the Perseids and meteor showers, great. Yeah.
But as far as the alien thing goes, like, I'm under the impression that there's not an alien civilization in our galaxy, at least.
Here's the weird thing, and I'm going to be all wacky tonight for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that there's aliens. I don't think I saw an alien ship or anything, but I think the likelihood that there's aliens here are probably pretty high. Not necessarily dozens of things, but there's some aliens here somewhere, and they're talking to somebody.
So let me clarify a little bit. Like, I don't think that all of these things flying around are ours, but I also don't think that they came from another planet either. Like, I think that there's a lot of slime and goo out there in our galaxy and beyond. Lots of slime, lots of goo, but not very many brains. And
probably not.
Like, my thought with those vehicles is, if they can do what we see that they can do, they're either from outside of our light cone or from here or somewhere like a different dimension here, or spiritual thing. Like, there's something going on, but I don't think, because if these things can travel faster than light, then aliens should be everywhere all around us. Like, all we should see in the sky is just blacked out stars from Dyson spheres. But we don't see that, But that if they have wormholes or something like that, they could be just outside of our light cone, and just massive.
Well, the weird thing, there's a what's his name? Jim Lear, right? Learjet
Yep.
fame. His father made the Learjet. His son, he's the son. He was a CIA guy, pilot, and everything. He says there's ships above us all the time. They're just cloaked.
Yeah, I believe
I
it.
don't know if he's nuts or what, but
I know they're
but
testing stuff here in Idaho all the time. We get inversion in our
Mhm.
valley, so like the entire valley would be covered. You can't see
Right.
shit. But once you get up above it, it's perfectly
Mhm.
clear, and that'd be just a perfect environment to be testing shit. You
Oh
know?
yeah, you could fly stuff over. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think they're
so, but
testing.
yeah,
I think they're testing quiet supersonic tech here.
yeah, it could be. Well, to me, to be honest with you, I think so. If we look at it from our logic model here that we've kind of developed, is the supersonics is history. That's why you know about it.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, they may be throwing some supersonic shit overhead, but that's not the real. That's not the gem.
But here's
The
the
gem
deal.
is something else.
The people that are designing the supersonic quiet jet don't know that that machine exists. That's
Right.
like, if we're making those, that's some sort of breakaway civilization that we are just living in the shadows in some kind of way. Like, I don't think that the normal 4-star general knows anything about those machines. Like, I don't know that anybody in the military knows anything about those machines.
Yeah. It's all. It can all be, it can all be happening. That's what I think we're at a point now. It's and the just another thing you mentioned, talking about throwing confusion into the works there. That's what AI is all about, if you
Yes.
ask me.
Yes.
Is just another way to confuse everybody, because now you can make, fairly convincing images of things, just to throw everybody off, right? It's like, well, we got this AI stuff we've been farting
Yeah.
around with. Let's throw it out there into the world, because now it's just going to cause chaos. And the interesting thing to me is that there's no better environment to control people than chaos, which doesn't make sense, but that's the reality. You put the people in chaos, and then over here you're in the non-chaos area, and you're controlling the stuff happening while everybody else is farting around trying to figure out what's happening.
Yeah.
That it's just it boils down to as simple as, the easiest way to get out of a bad situation. Say something happens, and you need to get out of somewhere, is throw the fire alarm, and guess what? You're going to get right out,
Yeah. Nothing
because there's
drives,
chaos.
like, as an anarchist, nothing drives me more crazy than when you see like the Summer of Love and people go, "Oh, it's anarchy in the streets." It's like, no, 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 no. That is
Right.
that is anarcho tyranny. Like, that is,
Yeah.
the government is there and they are using this ridiculous tyranny as a form of absolute chaos.
Exactly. But yeah, so I mean, I don't know what to make of all of it necessarily, but I think that, yes, I would, from what I saw, if it's from another planet, then boy oh boy, do we got some catching up to do. But I
Yeah.
don't think so. I think it probably is something that is just, it may have been in experimental stages in 2005. It's been 20 years, and who
Yeah.
knows?
Hey,
They're going up and down.
MH370 was in 2014 and they had those 3 orbs in that video. I don't know
Yeah.
if you've seen that video, but that's not that
Mhm.
long after what you saw.
Right. And I think the other thing is, they talk about, oh, we're going to make a space elevator.
Yeah.
That's stupid shit. I
Yeah.
mean, why would you want?
Yeah. If you got
I mean, it's
anti-gravity,
another
you're just whoop.
distraction. Yeah, you don't. If you have anti-gravity, you
Yeah.
don't need a space elevator.
Yeah.
The it's almost like, well, you have a wired microphone, right? You got a wireless microphone. What do you need a wired microphone
Yeah.
for?
I look
You know
at
what I
it
mean?
as another like excuse to just print unlimited money.
Yeah.
Hey, look,
Oh
we've got
yeah.
this fusion reactor, but we need helium-3 from the moon. So we're going to build a base on the moon, and then we're going to we're going to
Right.
transfer it all back, and it's going to save you so much money. Don't worry about
Right.
it. Like,
Yeah.
it'll cost trillions, but in the long run,
In the
climate
long
change will be
run.
better. While we're on that, like, this is something I had written down while we're thinking logically, which
Mhm.
is, so these hurricanes are just, they're just so bad. Like, I can't really think about it too much because they're just so fucking bad. When you go
Mhm.
onto Twitter, you see it's caused by 2 things. It's either climate change or weather
Mhm.
modification. Which do you think is more
Right.
likely? Climate change or
Uh,
weather modification?
the funny thing about that is, I mean, I'll be on board for either one,
Me too.
Harper Ray and all that kind of stuff. But to be honest with you, I don't see other than causing chaos, right?
Mhm.
Other than having another, variant of chaos, let's call it. I don't understand why they would. I mean, it disrupts so much. Other than, it's almost like, if it, let's say it is weather manipulation, um, then it's like Munchausen by proxy for the government, because they're like, we're going to decimate everything with our weather manipulation, and then we're going to come fix it all, and everybody's going to think we're the greatest.
But they're not fixing it. That's
Well,
where
I know,
that's
what I'm
where I
saying.
fall off on this, because like if this was the October surprise, if this was planned, hey, we're going to make this massive storm and we're going to have an amazing reaction to it, and it's going to make people love us and vote for us. But they're not doing the second part. Like they're
No,
failing
that's
miserably on the second part.
Yeah, maybe that guy's not with the program or something. But yeah, I don't know. I've always had a problem with climate change, and I'll tell you why. Because it. So I live here in Missouri, and you've ever heard of Times Beach?
No.
Right? So Times Beach, Missouri, is a Superfund site because they basically um, had so many chemicals that they ruined the environment in Times Beach.
Oh, wow.
Okay. It was toxic. It was toxic, and they had to move everybody. It was a whole big thing back in the, I think it was late 70s, early 80s. And I mean, it was killing people, right? It's kind of like lead in the water in Detroit kind of a situation, but worse, because they literally, it's like 3 Mile Island, but with chemicals. And they had to get everybody. And then, but Times Beach, it's been what, maybe 30, 40 years. They have done cleanup and so forth. But it's habitable again. Okay. So I think that we can have an effect in a very constant, because Times Beach is not that big compared to the world, right? In a concentrated area, I think that we as humans can have a very, short of nuclear war, can have a very big effect in a concentrated area. And we've done it again and again and again and again, right? There's all kinds of toxic areas, Superfund sites all over the place, but they're not everywhere. They're in little places, right? If you think globally, and so and then the other thing is nature, Chernobyl,
Yeah.
right? You still don't have people there, but it's healing itself. And
People
it's
could
itself
live
over
there.
decades.
Like people
Right.
could live there now for sure.
Yeah. The radiation's down enough.
You can eat fish out of Fukushima.
Yeah. So that's why global warming doesn't fit the logic model, because all these other places, even though they were decimated, right? Decimated, they've turned around within decades, right?
Yeah.
2-3 decades, they're turned back around with help, granted, some help, but I mean, they're not going to ruin it. They did a lot more work than they did to clean it up. You know what I mean? And so that's why when you talk about global aspect of things, people, I always say this, people have a real problem with scale. They have no idea how big the world is, right? They have no idea. When you talk about the scale of the world, they have no idea. If you look at a map and look at populated areas just in the United States, there's so much empty space.
Yeah.
Have you ever? If you
I flew from Alaska.
Idaho,
like I flew from Alaska. Like there's nothing. There's nothing there.
Nothing. And you're flying hours over nothing. But they can't grok it. They only see, it's like they see like they always hear of a person called a four corner person. So it's the four corners of their desk. That's what people are. They're four corner people.
Yeah.
All they can understand is the four corners around them.
There's this idiot on the internet named Kyle Kalinske. He's a stupid liberal. Like I don't mind liberals if they're not idiots, but this guy's just a fucking moron. And it was a perfect example of like how these people don't understand what you're talking about. He was flying over the country, which he never does because they live in cities and don't pay attention to the rest of the country. And he's taking a picture with his phone of crops. It's just a bunch of crops. And he goes, on his post is like, weird that the grass grows this way. I wonder why it does this. And you're like, because it's a fucking farm and people tell it to. It's like, it's just, it's just, the disconnect is just unbelievable. Like during COVID, all of my friends in San Francisco wanted to tell me how wrong I was. And one of their arguments was, well, you live up in just a cow pasture. There's no people around you. And it's like, dude, I live in a valley with 1 million people. Like we sit in traffic every day, just like you do. And they just
Yeah.
can't grasp that fact.
No.
Like that we're not just some podunk idiots living in fucking squalor and cow shit. Like this is a developed area. Like we have Walmarts, we have Costco's, believe it or not. Like, you know, there's malls here.
But people can't fathom it because they can't see. I mean, unless you are traveling a lot or something, even if you do, I mean, it's hard to see, you know, the other side of it or the other place
Yeah.
or the other things. I mean, think about, so if you go just about any major city and drive for 45 minutes, you're out of the city.
Yep.
Except with the exception of the East Coast in some places where you basically go from New York to Philadelphia, you know, for those things. But even them, you drive through some area that's not as populated.
Yeah.
And
you leave San Francisco
country,
and you can be in the vineyards in the afternoon, you know?
Yeah. It doesn't take long to get out of population. And I don't think that people just can't grok it. And that's why when you talk about the global warming, it's like, you know, how? And the other thing is we only have, and I don't want to be like against global warming. I think everything that the global warming people are doing is good. You know what I mean? To get us to think differently and so forth. But I don't totally buy into it. We'll only have like 100 years of weather data. How do we know that this isn't the cycle?
The heat island effect. You know, a lot of those places that they were taking temperature readings from 100 years ago were fields. You know, it was an airstrip in a field. Now that airstrip in a field is in a big, massive city that has the heat island effect. And like, this is something they will like. So I went to college. We'll get out of here in a minute. I went to college for business. And the majority of what they had you study for business was climate change. Like I had to take multiple, I had to take geology. I had to take, you know, climate, like all of this crazy climate change stuff. And they will teach you about the heat island effect. But if you make the point that the heat island effect could be affecting the average temperature of the planet, they'll tell you you're crazy.
But on the flip side of it, you know, the things that they want to do because of global warming, everybody says global warming impact is good. And I think we're behind. I think at this point, there is the problem with the solar power is that the efficiency isn't there, but it's getting there. Like we're only like at 10 or 15%. Now they've got stuff that says they can do 30% efficiency, right? And then the sun goes down.
And then the hail comes out and destroys the entire field, like happened in Texas last week.
That's right.
The problem I have with them is they're stuck on wind and solar. Like they won't even consider anything besides wind and solar. And like I'm an energy guy. Yeah, geo's great. Geothermal is amazing. Yeah. Like nuclear, we should be having nuclear. Like I think one of Elon Musk's goals for like he's throwing in with the new government. Like he thinks that Trump's going to win and he's putting all his chips in with the new government. And I think one of the major factors is like he wants his own nuclear power plant. Like why shouldn't he have his own nuclear power plant to build those gigafactories? You know, like he should have that.
Right. Yeah. Well, if he needs the energy to do all this.
Yeah.
The thing is, it's just like we have all these technologies that are probably any combination of those, right? Anything we just mentioned, depending on where you live, could take over for burning coal and anything else.
And like people demonize natural gas, but like if you look at the CO2 output in this country for the past 50 years, it falls off a cliff in like 2006. It's because we went to fracking. And like people hate to hear this, but I tell them all the time, especially my liberal friends, I'll ask them who was the most environmentally, like what president had the biggest environmental impact? And they'll all say President Obama. And I say, no, that's not true at all.
No,
it's
Nixon,
George W. Bush, actually.
Oh, George W. Bush.
It was George W. Bush because he threw a ton of money into fracking. You know, it was for dirty purposes. He wanted his family to make money and his connections. But it worked out really well for everyone. You know, it worked out really well for the greenies. You know, RFK, he doesn't demonize natural gas because he knows what it's done, like in replacing coal. Like here in Idaho, I'm a Bitcoin guy also. So like we have a gas power plant like 20 miles, 30 miles from where I live. and it's just there for excess energy. We don't really use it for much. They ramp it up when they need it in the summertime, but for the most part, it just runs a couple burners. It doesn't really do much. We should be building another one 20 miles away, and another one, and another one, and another one, and mine Bitcoin on those bastards until we need the energy, and then just keep moving it back and moving it back and moving it back.
That sounds like a Putin plan.
Yes, we are Putin apologists on this podcast. And on that note, let's get out of here. This is it was a blast. I could talk to you forever. That was one of the quickest hours I've ever done on this show.